Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 65 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Celozo. Today, Chris and I have a great guest with us, Christina from Copy by Christina. How are you doing, Christina?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you. I think this is going to be great for everybody because today we're going to talk about creating memorable content for your brand. And Christina, you're the expert, so we had to have you on for this.
Nice.
This one. Yeah. So are you up in Canada? Is that right?
I am. Yeah. I'm up in Calgary, Alberta. We're just defrosting after a severe weather warning up here. So it's been really cold. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I brought that up is because we're in Kansas City, and I think you accidentally sent your weather our way.
Maybe.
So cold.
It was negative 12. It was negative 12 this morning. For real. And that's
nothing. Like that's really nothing.
I feel bad complaining, but I'm frozen.
Yeah. You'll be fine.
You guys are much tougher up there.
Truth be told, I'm in slippers and fuzzy socks because I'm still freezing. So.
Right?
Yeah, you guys are much tougher, but you can I'm going to try to send this weather back your way because it is freezing. But anyway, thanks for making time for us today. This is going to be great. We're excited to dive into just all the tips and tricks that you use to help create great content for Amazon sellers. But before we dive into that, you want to just let us know a little bit about your background, how you got into this space to begin with?
Sure. So I'm actually a flight attendant, and I've flown for a major Canadian airline for the last 12 years. And I started my Amazon journey. I just turned 40. And that was in late 2019. And I think I was just looking for something more, aside my flying career, just trying to figure out if I could maybe develop my own brand. So Amazon seemed like a really great route to do that. So I started my Amazon journey, and things have been moving along and progressing really well. And then, of course, COVID hit and I was furloughed. I'm still technically on payroll with my flying career, but aviation in Canada has taken a very hard hit. So I was furloughed, and I had to kind of think of, another skill set that I could use to not only, live within my means, but also continue to scale my beauty brand. So I began my writing career, and I now write copy for Amazon sellers, but also a variety of other clients outside of the Amazon space.
Yes, and that's how we found you, right? So we found you on Instagram. And so you probably went from like 0 to 100 in like a couple of months.
Kind of, yeah.
You're scaling that fast. You're getting a lot of followers. You're putting a lot of content out. Your content on Instagram is fantastic. You give good tips. So I have a feeling that this Copy by Christina business is going to probably take over the brand at some point. At some point, you got to make a decision.
Yeah,
so
it's been great.
How's that been? How was that? How's that doing the juggling of creating a brand and signing on Amazon, but also, starting another side hustle where you're kind of helping Amazon sellers, but you're still selling the brand?
At first, it was okay because I wasn't really self-promoting. I was just, running my business off of referrals, and I was happy to do that. And then I realized that, if I really wanted to take my writing business to the next level, I had to do some promotion. So that's why many people started seeing me, and they thought I popped up out of nowhere on Instagram, but I'd had a functioning business prior to that. So It's definitely been challenging. I think juggling anything, especially two businesses, one that is just like booming right now, has definitely brought its challenges. But, it's just like my beauty brand. You just keep finding unique ways to keep pushing forward, and you just keep going, I guess. So, yeah.
That's great. I love it. I love the story. I think that's really cool. Just in terms of being an entrepreneur and starting your own business and taking what was not a great scenario, being furloughed from your airline job, and then pivoting and going and taking a talent that you have and going with it. I think that's fantastic. Let's go back in time to when did you start your own business on Amazon?
It was roughly a year and a half ago. So I had, done all the steps. I kind of did what I call active learning. Whenever a new seller comes to me and asks me how I did it, I really try to promote this sense of active learning where as you're learning and as you're absorbing content, you're doing those steps at the same time. Because as you know, you can be easily inundated with information. So I did this active learning process and I went live, and I've had the beauty brand for roughly a year, like maybe 15 months now, 16 months. So yeah.
That's great. Did you launch it in Canada or in the US?
In Canada. So I'm really open with the fact that I actually didn't start Amazon with a lot of money. I think that you need to have good capital behind you. I don't recommend starting with a very limited resource, but I started in Canada for a reason, and that was because I knew I had a great product, or I thought I had a great product, and I was concerned about the inventory levels in the US. And subsequently, with COVID hitting, it would have closed my business very quickly, especially with these inventory restrictions. So I'm really happy that I went in Canada, and that's still where I am. So, yeah.
Nice. I need to get up there somehow. So I only sell in the U.S. and I'm probably leaving money on the table by not being in the Canadian marketplace. I just need to figure that out.
It's so funny because when I first started, I was totally dissuaded from going into Canada. A lot of the mentors that I would work or coach with would say, like, you've got to go US, don't waste your time in Canada. But I think Canada is an undervalued market for certain products and certain niches. So I think there's definitely opportunity here.
I agree as well. Yeah. And that is something that I'm going to be doing, is launching different marketplaces at some point in the future, just because, like Chris said, we're leaving money on the table by not doing it.
Right.
All right. Now let's talk about your writing and copy. So you obviously have a passion and a love for creating good copy. Where does that come from?
Interestingly enough, I think some people are just born with these creative skill sets. And, I also was kind of an acclaimed public speaker when I was much younger. And I kind of shelved these things as you get older and you pursue other careers. In my flying career, I didn't need public speaking and I didn't really need writing. So, I'd written blogs. Commonly, friends and family would come to me for speech writing or just other little various things. So I really had to think when I was furloughed what I was good at and what I could kind of hone in on in a business. And initially I just thought like, I'll get the odd blog off of Fiverr. But that's not really what happened. I learned very quickly that, e-commerce owners are busy and they also don't necessarily enjoy writing, or it's just not a skill set of theirs. So yeah, that's how I got started.
Yeah, that's me. Guilty as charged. I don't like writing anything. Yeah. I'd rather just outsource it and like, here you go. Yeah. I'm sure you can do a better job than I can. So go ahead.
And it's so true you bring it up, because you mentioned it's natural to you. That's a gift that you have, is you're writing and you're comfortable with it. And everybody has their own talents. And it's like my wife is an artist, and and she looks at images and that, and she can do things and make things look so much better that I would never even conceive of. And it's the same thing with writing. If you've got that skill, and that's why it's important, I think, for a lot of sellers, especially if you're starting out, it's so helpful to go to the experts, people that have their talents. It's so much better to just go ahead and let them do it for you, as opposed to trying to do it by yourself, because it's just going to delay your success or cause you to fail unnecessarily. So it's great. It's great that you're doing this now for sellers, because people need this. I think
so.
Yeah, no doubt.
So what services do you offer? What are you with Copy by Christina? What are you offering for sellers? Are you doing titles, bullet points, descriptions, A+ content? What all are you doing for them?
Sure. So I actually, ironically enough, not only do I write in the Amazon niche, but I'm also a lifestyle and personal development blogger. So I write content completely outside of Amazon. But in terms of Amazon, I do a variety of content. So I do the Amazon listings. And so that'll include anything from, the title, the bullet points, the description, and the A+ content as well. I've had some clients come to me who are kind of in a pickle with their budget and they need some images done. So I've created images. But in terms of copy specifically, I also do a lot of brand blogs. So smaller sellers that are just getting their websites up and running, they'll come to me and I'll create their homepage or about us pages. Social media content is really big for sellers as well, trying to promote their products. So I do that kind of content, as well as email launches, Etsy listings. So it's kind of anything copywriting, really.
That's a bunch to offer.
Yeah.
I'm writing these down because now I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the listings are going to be a time-consuming thing, and then you put on social media on that. I mean, that's a lot of offers.
Yeah.
and this is another thing. I think if anybody who's listening that's just starting, or if you have started, this is going to ring true for sure, is you start your Amazon business and then you realize there's a lot of things that I have to do. I mean, to do social media posts, which helps your brand awareness, to launch a website, to do your listing, to do all of these things, not to mention talk to suppliers and inventory. We go on and on forever about things you can do. It becomes overwhelming really quick. And so let's just dive in. Let's start with one at a time. Let's start with the listing itself.
Sure.
What's the most important thing on a listing for an Amazon?
Obviously, the title is the most important aspect of a listing, and obviously your keyword use throughout your listing is really important, but the title is, the truth is we know as copywriters that people don't necessarily read every word in the listing. People are very visual orientated, so they're looking at your photos first, and they're kind of glancing at the first few words of your title. And then if they like the product, then they'll start to kind of read bullet points, maybe in a sporadic order. So the title, I'd say, is the most important.
What do you do with the title? Because you mentioned they read the first couple words. How important is the way you structure the title for conversions?
Well, first I'll say that you'll find many different listing creators have various ways of creating content. So I don't want to say that there's a black and white process. There isn't. You'll hear people who reference Google for keyword research. You'll hear people who only reference specific Amazon tools. So for me personally, in terms of the title, the first 5 to 6 words I believe are the most important. So I structure my title around that. I have the main keywords, the ones that are most valuable first. And I do try to make it so it can be read easily. I don't like keyword stuffing, and I really prefer to have a title that I can read as an average person, and that makes sense and resonates to me.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think that's a struggle with a lot of people when they're making their listings, is they'll read all this stuff about how they need to get all their keywords in there, and the title, and they need all their keywords in the bullet points, and then you can tell when something is written in a way to just stuff all the keywords in there, because it's like run-on sentences. There's no flow. It's not really readable. And so I think there's a balance there of you will need your keywords in there, but it needs to tell the story in a way that resonates with the buyer.
True, I agree. Yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that there's unique ways that you can learn to do that. You don't necessarily have to keyword stuff. I think when I first started creating listings, I did that because more out of fear. I really wanted my clients to do really well, and so I thought, if I can put as many keywords in here, it'll be helpful. But it makes a copy confusing and convoluted, so I really try to just keep it simple. And some clients do come to me and they're like, "Chris, there's not enough keywords in here," and so I just try to tell them to just give it some time, see what happens. But yeah, I avoid keyword stuffing.
And that probably happens a lot in the titles. People are like, "Hey, use all the characters you can."
Yeah.
Do you just focus on, like you mentioned, you're just focusing on whatever is relevant to the product, make it readable, and if it hits 200, great. If it doesn't, just keep it like it is. Is that kind of strategy?
I generally use the full 200 characters. If I find some products don't have maybe there's not as many keywords that I think are as valuable. So I'm not stressed about it. I'll use as much as I can of those 200 characters, but definitely relevancy is everything. I oftentimes have clients suggest keywords, and I have to explain to them that, if it's not relevant or really true to your product, then we really don't want to use that. So yeah, relevancy is important.
That's good. And so you're a fan of a longer title.
I am. Yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to anything shorter. I don't have these set limits, I will use 200 if I feel there's valuable keywords and I can max out that space. But I've created shorter titles that work really well as well. So I think it just depends on the product and the category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's move on to the bullet points. What's your overall goal with the bullet point section? What is your focus when you're trying to write for those listings?
So over the course of developing my writing skill, obviously I've taken courses not only in Amazon listing creation, I've taken several and they're all very different. But I've also taken, copywriting courses. And so the biggest thing for me is defining a clear USP in the first bullet point. Your customer should be able to read your first bullet point and understand what you're selling very easily. And if they can't, that's kind of a problem. So the first bullet point being the main USP, and then also just being a little bit more creative with the writing. Obviously, keyword use is important, but just being a little bit more creative. I tend to use some puns in my bullet points. I always make sure it's on brand and okay with my clients, but I want that copy to stand out. I want it to be a little bit different. And then just lastly about the bullet points, when I first started, I was writing to 200 characters, and that is very short. We all know that Amazon supposedly only indexes to the first 1,000 of the 5 bullets combined, but I was noticing it's really hard to have compelling copy with 200 characters. Mm-hmm. So I've since increased, and I try to stick around 250 to 300. I'll never exceed 300. So that's my highlights, I guess, for the bullet points.
I like one thing that you pointed out there, which is interesting because it's something I didn't think about. But when you mentioned puns, mm-hmm. and making the listing more interesting, like
right.
funny, but that would be a gigantic differentiator. And I'd never really heard that before. That's mm-hmm. a really great strategy. And I can see how that stands out big time.
I think, you have to be careful that you're not using quotes and things like that. But as long as it's a known pun and it's tasteful and it can represent the product well and the brand, then I do try to use that because some people remember those things. Mm-hmm. They'll look back and be like, oh, do you remember that product? Like, yeah, it might have been something really insignificant, like an office supply, but they'll remember it just because of the wording that was used. So I do try to encourage my clients to think outside of the box with how they're allowing the copy to unfold.
Let me ask you one more question about the bullet points.
Sure.
Because we see this a lot, and there's so you'll see a lot of bullet points out there where it'll have a word and then it'll be bold, or so it'll say, and it'll be like they'll have their 5 keywords like durable, and it'll be all bold, and then they'll describe about the durability, and then it'll be whatever flexible, and then it'll describe about that.
Right.
From a copywriter standpoint or a buyer standpoint, is that good, or is that too? I mean, what's the best way? Is it better just to tell the story, or is it better to highlight those points like that?
Are you talking about in the first few characters of making like it kind of a headline? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like in the bullet, like the first word will be
right.
It'll be bold, and it'll just say like durable, and then it'll be dash, and then the rest of it will talk about how it's durable.
Right. So obviously I do use headlines. I don't use all caps anymore because I had read that it wasn't within the style guides. I always am trying to follow style guides, sure. But I do use headlines. But they're not just like, it wouldn't just be one singular word. It would be trying to captivate attention in a little bit more of a compelling way. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep that in mind throughout all of the content that I'm creating. So no. So no. Sorry.
You also see like emojis and stuff in there that
yeah, I do. And it's funny. I was actually in one of the listing courses. Like I said, I've taken a few, and one of them actually suggested putting emojis in. I think it was a description, and I just personally don't do this. If clients really insist on it, I will, but I just refrain from using any type of emoji. It's not within the style guides, and to be perfectly honest, unless it's a beauty product, for some reason, I feel like, younger women, you might be able to target that way, but I just don't think it's that professional. So I personally don't provide them in any of the copy that I create unless a client really wants it.
Yeah.
That's twice now that we've had good copywriters on here, and they said the exact same thing. They said the emojis kind of cheapens the brand and makes it look kind of cheesy a little bit. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because, sometimes I do have clients who I can only present the information as I know it, whether it's against terms of service or against the style guides. I just present the information. And so if they choose to go against that, I have to abide by what the client wants, but I really don't recommend it.
Yeah. Again, you're right. It's proving the point, Chris. The experts are saying it. No emojis. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on now to A+ content.
Sure.
I think this is a big one. So let's go two things. How important is A+ content if you can do it? And then what is your goal when you're setting up the A+ content?
I think A+ content is obviously really important, but more so we all know from more of a brand awareness perspective. I can't remember what they said the conversion rate is. I've seen different numbers. It's quite a bit lower than what you would automatically assume. And people are visual. So I personally feel that your images in that A+ area should really be stand out. Like they should look really great. And then the copy should unfold a story, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the copy has to be really long. My A+ content isn't overly long, and it's because people don't read it. I really want to present a story that matches the imagery, or that can, direct a graphic designer to create that imagery. But I don't stick to overly long copy in the A+ area.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you hear a lot of stuff that you can do in the A+ content that, you could tell your story. If you're a small business owner and it's a family business, that's a chance to highlight that in that section and show pictures of yourself or your family or whatever. And also it's a good section if you've got other products in your comparisons. So I think this is good. But it's interesting to talk about. It's interesting to hear a copywriter talk about how people don't read that a lot of stuff, and it's because it's true. People are visual, so it's so important that your copy compels them early on, and
exactly.
And you get them with you tell the story quickly.
I agree. Yeah, keeping it, a little bit more simplified. I think sometimes clients come to me and they really want very descriptive, wordy text, and I just don't think that works. People are very simple. They want to understand how the product works. Yes, romanticize it a little bit, of course, but it doesn't need to be extravagant. It needs to be well read, well understood to your audience.
In that A+ content, do you feel like the images are more important than the text, or they need to work together?
I think they need to work together, but I do feel like the images are really important. But I do, obviously, as a writer, feel like the copy does matter. I've seen a lot of A+ content with beautiful imagery, and then the copy doesn't make sense, or there's a language barrier, and you can tell that when you're reading it, and it kind of takes away from the value of those images. So I feel like, both are equally as important, but images is what's going to lead people to read this content.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree. Chris, do you have any questions about the A+ content, or let's?
No, I think that was good. I mean, I was getting ready to say product price has probably something to do with this. Like if you sell a $200 item compared to a $20 item, the listing is going to be treated differently, I would assume, because somebody's going to take the time to read everything in a $200 listing. They're going to look at the bullets. They're going to look at the descriptions. They're going to look at all the features, make sure it's the right item for them. But a $20 item, coasters or coffee mugs or anything like that, we're just buying and going on with it, and we're not really reading the descriptions or maybe even the bullet points. I can't. And this is no knock on copywriting. It's just people treat $20 products differently than what they would treat like a $200 or $300 product or even higher, because they're making a bigger investment. So for people listening, if you have a high ticket item, a service like Christina's offering is going to make much more sense, because you're going to have a lot more people stay on their listing. They're going to look at your listing longer than if you sell like a small item in comparison. Do you see the same thing on your end, or is that just my assumption?
No, I do agree. I do think that price does play a factor in it. In terms of the bullet points specifically, though, I actually think people look at the images no matter what first. It doesn't, the price obviously plays a factor in their actual purchase decision, but the first thing everyone is looking at are those photos. And then they want to evaluate from there, like, is it worth it for me to read the next, the first bullet point? So, yeah.
All right.
Stuff.
It is. So let's talk about what happens when you update your copy to be professional. So what do you see happen with like conversion rates for your clients and their sales volume, et cetera, after they've worked with you to get their copy much better?
I think there's obvious impact to conversions, especially if they've done their images and kind of, optimize all portions of their listing. I think it comes together and it does increase their sales. But It's all variable. Like I don't have an exact number. I don't provide my clients a guarantee, and that's because I'm not an algorithm scientist either, right?
Mhm.
So I'm very careful with how I word those things, but I definitely think that it makes a difference into your conversion. So
Yeah. Well, we can answer that for you. If you upgrade your listing with good copy, it
yeah,
absolutely helps your conversion. And you're going to help a lot of people with their conversion rates because so we're coming at this from the advertising side.
right,
And ads don't work if your listing doesn't convert.
right.
It could be even worse. It could be you paying to prove to Amazon that your product's not relevant because they're using that data. So all the time, that's something that we're saying right off the bat. You should not start advertising yet. You need to make sure that you work with someone like yourself to get the listing way better because it makes a huge difference. And people get frustrated. They think they're doing everything right. They're running ads and they're like, my ads are not working. It's terrible. I'm wasting all this money. And it could be something as simple as they just haven't spent enough time on their copy to optimize.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I have also seen, unfortunately, some really bad listings. And when they see the finished result of, great copy to go with that product, they are overwhelmed by just reading the changes. It can be quite substantial. So,
yeah, it's true.
What's an example of a bad copy? You don't have to get the name or anything, but what's a bad listing to you? When you see a bad listing, what's it look like?
I don't really love this conversation just because my poor clients, they spend a lot of time when they're first learning. So let's skip that question.
I don't blame you. It is, but you bring up a good point because people are putting their heart and soul into starting a business and they're doing everything. They're really working hard, and that one aspect just may not be their skill set. And so, they've tried. And that's where you come in. And that's where I'm sure when they see what you've done with their product that they're invested in, that has to be pretty fun to see their reaction. Like, oh my gosh, this is how I meant to describe my product right here.
Yeah.
These are the
Some
words.
of them were very surprised. Others I have more a little inquisitive. They want to understand like why I use certain keywords, or they kind of want to understand how the process unfolds. And when I explain certain things, just little things that they might not be aware of, then they gain a better understanding of why the copy is created the way it is. So it's nice to see.
That's awesome. Well, let's move on, Chris, if you're okay. Let's move on to some other things that she was talking about because I think these are fascinating. We haven't talked about this much. You were talking about doing like social media posts and some email content. These are also things that are really important to sellers. I mean, people, and this I'll admit, I am horrible at social media content. I've always outsourced it just because I don't know what to write. Like if you're writing some different social media posts to promote a brand, how do you go? Because I'm terrible. I don't know what to do. I'm always like, hey, come buy my product. It's
right.
5% off. Come on. And it's hard to sell it. So what are your tactics on that?
I'm not a marketing expert by any means, but I think a copywriter who has a little bit of skill with graphics can do these things. So for me, a really big thing is I look at content in terms of 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are I want to educate, I want to entertain, I want to inspire, and I want to promote that product and that brand. So that's done kind of strategically throughout the posts. It's not, I don't create content that is, what is that word when it's very like systematic, like quote, image, quote. I don't gear my content creation towards that, but I do try to stay within these 4 pillars so that their audience is not only gathering information about their brand or their product, but they're entertained, they're interested. Creating memorable copy for social media, it isn't necessarily as simple as everyone thinks. I think people think it's easy. They can just slap a photo up there and it'll be fine. And for some people with a great following, that does work. But that content in there does matter. So,
for sure. What about frequency of social media content? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, we all know the Instagram algorithm has just gotten so challenging to get into. That's just a nature of the platform. They want you to be using their ads, stuff like that. So I do encourage my clients to be posting twice a day, but I have heard some people say that 3 to 5 times a week is also sufficient. However, I will say it's important on Instagram to be posting on all their content platforms. So whether that's a reel, Instagram TV, a story, you really should be delivering in all outlets for that platform.
That's interesting. That's a deficiency right now that I have.
The word real just really threw me off. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot of work too. Even my own social content, my own platform, I've grown significantly in the last month or so, but people don't realize the hours that go into that content creation. It's significant.
Yeah. Well, you're doing it right. We can tell you because you are everywhere and
yes.
That's what you want. So if your work on your own brand speaks volumes about what you can do for others. That's interesting. Well, all right, let's talk about one more thing here. What about emails to clients? Like, do you write copy for like a follow-up email sequence to like help generate reviews or any other thing?
I don't do that kind of copy. I stay away from that. But, you've got to be very careful with terms of service in Amazon. But for example, a small brand who's selling on Amazon who has an email list, I'll write a product launch email for them or a follow-up email, those kinds of things. Yeah. I think a lot of the email that is out there, obviously there's marketing tactics and the truth is that they work or people wouldn't be using these templates. But I always try to keep my own little spin on things. So it's not this generic, like, hey, Christina, like this exact like science to it, Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do create the email content for clients as well.
That's cool. That's a thing I think a lot of people don't put enough weight on is that email list that you have when you're launching a new product. If you've got an email list of clients or customers, how huge that can be to get your new product launched faster on Amazon.
You're right. It can be substantial. Yeah, it's an important factor of launching. So
yeah. Well, this has been great. I mean, you're giving us a ton of great information, and if anybody's listening right now, they have to be sold on coming to you to upgrade their copy on their listing. If anybody's listening and they want to use your services, how can they get in touch with you?
They can always head to my website, which is copychristina.com, or I'm very receptive and very responsive on Instagram. They can send me a DM and my replies are generally quite quick. So yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So everybody out there, if you're listening and you want to, you got to go to copychristina.com, find her on Instagram. I'm sure you're on other social medias as well. But
I'm on a few.
We see everyone. Well, thanks for the time today.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, what is one tip that can really help sellers with their listing? We all know about titles, bullet points, descriptions, but then on the back end of that title, there's so many different fields, right? There's like search term field, subject matters on some of these. Are there any fields like what's something that you automatically do that's a good win when a client comes to you, or that sellers can do?
I don't really have a really great tip for the back end. I think this is all common things that people know in Amazon right now. But one really big important thing that I encourage clients to really focus on is their product USP. Like, what is their unique selling proposition? What are they really? And I think that gets easily missed because an Amazon seller, you just think you have a great product and you want to, market it to the masses. But I really think honing in on what is unique and different about your product will help you in terms of your overall copy across all avenues, website, Amazon, anywhere that you're creating copy.
There you go. Know your USP.
Yeah. I agree. You've spelled that out really well. And I think a lot of people, they get just in the weeds of just listing the features and just here's what it is. Here, it's made of this. It does this.
Yeah.
And forget about the pain point they're solving for whoever's buying it.
Exactly.
We get our blinders on. We get we get our blinders on. We're just focused on this, and we don't think about what's the customer reading or what are they looking at. How can we help that with the product?
Yeah, very true.
Great tip to end on. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. I encourage everyone to reach out to you, to go to copychristina.com, find you on Instagram. Their business is going to thank them for reaching out to you for sure.
Their wallets will.
Their
for
wallets.
Sure.
Exactly. Bank account will appreciate the call to Christina. So again, thanks for coming on. Everyone who's listening, if you like content like this, I encourage you to subscribe to our podcast. Leave us some feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Leave us a review. Also, you can see us. We live stream these every time we record our podcast. So you can always follow us on the Solozo YouTube channel, the Solozo Facebook page, the Solozo LinkedIn page. If you turn on notifications, you'll be notified when we go live with great people like Christina with this awesome content. So we encourage you to do all that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Christina, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll be back at this again tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Bye.